Good morrow, good aft, good eve. How fare thee? I hope thee doth fare well. Kind of adopted an advert voice there. Do you like the fit? Would it surprise you to know that I already had this before I even had YouTube and before I started thinking of doing any of this? If you know me, probably not. I did just order this on a random Wednesday in my flat kitchen for £11 off Amazon, and I do wear it quite regularly. If anyone makes a comment on the fact that it's not ironed, I'm blocking you. So nobody make a comment on the fact that it's not ironed. It's too hot to iron. It's like 26 degrees, and my cut-off point is like 15. England's not meant to be this temperature, which is why you're probably getting a lovely amount of background noise right now. But if I close that window, I will die. This is polyester. Perhaps the day of judgment is upon us. I shall prevail, but I'm doing it with difficulty. I think I can hear the trumpets of Archangel Gabriel blowing. Don't know if it's Gabriel. Some trumpet angel is blowing. Ooh. Anyway, that leads me on to today's topic. Monks. I love monks. I think they're fascinating. I think I was a monk in a past life. If you go past the fact that I was a Victorian street urchin who made it to like the age of 7 at a push, working in a workhouse and died after an infection from like cutting off a finger. And also the fact that I was a Tudor peasant that probably drowned in the stinky poopy Thames in London. Then I was a monk. Definitely in a really irrelevant little monastery in the middle of nowhere. As stated also in last video, enough waffling. But not stated in last video, monk time! First off, most monks were nepo babies, so instead of waffling in an interview about how their parents had nothing to do with their blossoming acting career, they were giving a large donation to the church so they could They were giving a large donation to the church so they could become the 1% of the population that were brothers. Many second and third aristocratic sons were encouraged to become monks because you'd get an education and it was a pretty respected career and there was real power if you got to the top, which I will talk about later. My script is also in the same position as it was last time. Yeah, so if you were a preteen monk, which you could be as young as 5 when you were sent to the monastery, you were called an oblate, and then on turning 15 you became a novice. Both oblates and novices were never permitted to be alone. They always had to have the supervision of another monk, but not a full monk, because they didn't mix with the full monks. There's always just a man standing in the room. I doubt when they were sleeping, but literally every other time there's just a dude. Small monasteries only had around a dozen brothers, but bigger ones could have as much as 100, and I think I saw somewhere that there was one in France that had like 400. But this all depended on the monastic income from the land that was attached to the abbey. So called an abbey because there was an abbot running it. And if you didn't have an abbot, if you weren't important enough to have an abbot, you just had a prior. So it was called a priory instead of an abbey. Anyway, so as stated, the abbot was at the top and he had absolute power on like everything. He was elected by senior monks, and he was supposed to consult people when he did things, these senior monks, but obviously he didn't have to. He also had the job for life. He also represented the monastery in like all matters of said monastery. Also, brothers had to kiss his hand. Also, if you wanted him to be gone, he had to be removed by the bloody Pope! So you better hope your abbot was nice or you're having a horrible time. And they were supposed to reject personal wealth. There were lay brothers kind of just hovering around. They did a lot of menial tasks, a lot of labour tasks. It's like cooking, agricultural tasks, did some laundry, and they lived in separate quarters to the monks. And I don't think they mixed very often. They weren't allowed to talk to each other. So it's basically just a monk echo chamber. Let's talk about the fit. Let's talk about that monastic drip right now. I think we should bring it back. This is really comfy. If I wasn't so warm right now, I'd be having a really good time. Maybe we shouldn't bring the hair back. On second thoughts, I didn't give myself a tonsure for the video, which is the bowl cut with a little ball patch on top. I thought maybe maybe that was too much. I also don't know if that's how you pronounce it, and why they were required to do that. Was it just for vibes? They literally... Monasteries would employ a barber so the brothers kept... They'd employ a barber so the brothers kept looking fresh. Apparently the tonsure was to imitate Christ's crown of thorns. That does make sense now. That does make sense. Most monks wore linen underclothes with like a simple woolen tunic on top, and then it was tied with some kind of belt thing. Oh, I'm not actually wearing my belt right now. Not that you can see it, actually. Can you hear that? They wore a cowl, which was a long sleeveless robe with a big R hood. And then over the robe, over the cowl, they wore another robe, which was sleeved this time. And in winter, they were allowed a sheepskin cloak to keep them warm. But I wish it was winter. Please, God, I wish it was winter! Monks did actually have to work quite hard. And for no means, they didn't get any money, but they did have food and drink and shelter all the time. So, after receiving an education, which was reading, writing, arithmetic, and Latin, they spent their days helping the poor by creating hospitals and orphanages and homes for the aged and also for travellers. They could be copying out like manuscripts about daily medieval life, teaching aristocratic youth, and also they were patroning the arts. I don't know if patroning is a word. They were sponsoring the arts, not only by making their own, but also by sponsoring, said yet again, local sort of architects and artists to decorate their buildings to spread the Christian message. That was their main thing. If you didn't know, that was their main thing. Many of these tasks were performed in silence. Some monks took a vow, but also it was a general rule that they weren't allowed to speak at all in church, in the kitchens, in the refectory, or in the dormitories, so basically nowhere. General meetings tended to be the only place brothers did speak, and even then it was kept to like monastic matters and everyday necessity. No yapping. As much as I like to say, Louis, stop moving your hands. As much as I like to say I would have been a monk, I think I would have struggled on that front. I would have just started speaking to myself, roaming the hallways like a ghost, freak some of the other brothers out. Some of the other brothers who were communicating through gestures and whistles because they weren't allowed to talk, so they had to develop their own little sign language, which is pretty sick, to be fair. But I do like talking. Well, there was to be no speaking to lay brothers, novices, or outside visitors at all. And if you broke any of the rules, the abbot could beat you, he could leave you out of activities, or he could actually just imprison you in the monastery. Don't piss Abbot John off, bro. He'll kidnap you. It's happened to me before. He will kidnap you. In terms of daily life, monks had busy days. They woke up at 4:30 a.m. in winter and 7:30 a.m. in summer because their whole day was dictated by the lights since they didn't have any electricity. Duh. After a quick wash, they'd start their silent work at the beginning of the day. So that was like copying or reading or writing, that sort of thing. Then they'd have morning mass, which led into a chapter meeting where everyone gathered to discuss monastic matters. Then another working period, which could include manual labour if no lay brothers were around, but I'd assume they usually were. Then it was the most important meal of the day, having some lunch. Did I mention midday mass? I can't remember if I did, but they had midday mass as well. Then more working. Then the day ended at 4:30 p.m. in winter, and then they had dinner. They didn't go to bed until 6 in winter and 8 in summer. So they were living it up in summer. Usually it wasn't an unbroken sleep. They'd wake at around 2 or 3 a.m. to sing mass again, as they did quite often. And in winter, a lot of the time they just wouldn't go back to sleep. They'd just do some silent work again. Get a little head start on their day's tasks. As horrible as waking up at 4:30 would be, they did get their 8 hours in. Every day. Got a better sleep schedule than me. They never had to worry about going without food, drink or shelter, but were also expected to live really simply with little to no possessions. So other than his clothes, a monk might have a pen, a knife, a handkerchief, a comb and a small sewing kit. And beds were quite uncomfortable. It was just like a straw or feather mattress with a few woolen blankets. But I think you'd learn to live with it if you were living in a really rich institution, which meant that you were well catered for with bread, eggs, cheese, vegetables, grains, and loads of wine and ale. What more could a man want? In stricter monasteries, they saved meat for the ailing and also for certain feast days. But in more lenient monasteries, they enjoyed chicken, pork, rabbit, game birds. For 1 meal a day in winter and 2 meals a day in summer. That's why I'd want to be a monk, because you'd never have to worry about harvests or shortages. You always had food. No stress on that front. Honestly, no stress anywhere really. You have to work quite a lot, but copying out a manuscript doesn't seem very stressful. Overall, I would like to have been a brother. I like copying things. I don't believe in God, which might be a slight issue, but I would have done back then, or I could have just pretended. I don't think I would have spoken enough for anyone to doubt me anyway. I might make a modern monastery for all of us. Drop a comment below if you join my abbey. Who wants to be my prior? Who wants to be my prior? Who wants to be a lay brother? Tag yourself in the comments. Do you want to be a novice? Do you want to be an oblate? Well, I don't think anyone under the age of 15 is watching my videos. But oblates represent! I get to be the abbot though, because it's my monastery. I'll build it by hand. Anyway, if you never see me again, I ran into the woods. Fare thee well!